Okay, now that you're able to multiply a whole number by a fraction, we can finally get to solving equations with fractions. Let's go through this. We have this equation, 2/3 x plus 5/6 equals 2x minus 7/2. As I said in the previous video, nothing wrong with mathematically with you saying that you will subtract 2x from both sides. It's just when you do this, you have to do 2/3 minus 2. It's maybe a little bit messy. The same thing with subtracting 5/6 from negative 7/2. You can do it. It's just because you're dealing with fractions, it's very easy to make a dumb mistake. And so what we're going to do first are the goal of the first few steps is going to be to, I'll call this remove the denominators or cancel the denominators. Now, how are we going to accomplish this? Step one, we are going to find the common denominator for all the fractions, not just the ones on the left, not just the ones on the right, but all of them. If you are not sure how to find the common denominator, if this is something you're struggling with, you should look at your textbook in the review section for fractions to refresh your memory, or look at a few YouTube or Khan Academy videos. We're not going to talk about necessarily how to find the common denominator. Here, this is something that you should be very familiar with. Our denominators are 2, 3, and 6. So the common denominator in this case, which by the way is the same thing as the least common multiple of 2, 3, and 6 is 6, right? 6 is the smallest number that I can divide by 2, by 3, or by 6, right? Step 2, multiply every term by the common denominator. Multiply every term by the common denominator. Multiply the 2/3 x by 6, the 5/6 by 6, the 2x by 6, and the negative 7/2 by 6. And the reason why you're allowed to do that is because you're essentially multiplying the left side and the right side by that same number and distributing the multiplication, right? So you're again multiplying every term by 6. Now, this is something that you should be able to do very easily because of what we learned in the last video, right? 6 divided by 3 is 2, times 2 is 4, so that's 4x. 6 divided by 6 is 1, times 5 is 5, plus 5 equals, well, 6 times 2 is 12, that's easy, 12x. And 6 divided by 2 is 3, times 7 is 21, minus 21. So again, we're just dividing the 6 by the bottom, multiplying by the top in each fraction. And we've accomplished our first goal. We removed the denominators. And from here out, we're just solving, right? We know exactly what to do, right? Once we get to this point, we know that we should either subtract 12x from both sides or 4x from both sides, right? We're now in very familiar waters doing a problem that's really, really easy. It's probably easier to subtract 4x from both sides to keep things positive. So we have our 4x plus 5, and we will subtract 4x from that, and 12x minus 21. We will subtract 4x from that, so that the 4x cancels, leaving us with 5 equals 12x minus 4x is 8x minus 21. Next, we want to undo the subtraction of 21, so we will add 21 to both sides, right? We will add 21 to 5, and we will add 21 to the 8x minus 21, and 5 plus 21 is just 26, equals 8x, right? The plus 21 and minus 21 cancel each other. And finally, we divide both by 8, so 26 divided by 8 equals 8x divided by 8. And I'll write the final answer here. 26 divided by 8, you can simplify by dividing by 2 on top and bottom, giving us 13 over 4, equals 8 and 8 cancels, x. So x is equal to 13 over 4. So again, our strategy was not to solve the equation as it was given to us. It was to remove the denominators and solve the easier equation. And to remove the denominators, we just multiply every single term by the least common multiple, which is also the common denominator of all the denominators, which in this case are 2, 3, and 6. Let's move on to the next example. Very similar. We have 3x minus 7 over 8 equals 2/3 x plus 3/5. Again, the first step is going to be to find the least common multiple, because that's the common denominator of all of the denominators, which in this case are 3, 5, and 8, right? 3, 5, and 8. And the least common multiple of 3, 5, and 8 is 120. And that means that we're going to multiply every single term. And by the way, this right here is one term, right? Every single term by that number, by 120, right? We have 120 times the left side equals 120 times the right side. Well, let's do that. I'll do it in 2 steps. I'll do the division part first and the multiplication part second, because in this case the numbers are a little bit big. So I'll illustrate it in a little bit more detail, but if you're capable of doing it in 1 step, feel free to do it in 1 step. So 120 divided by 8 is 15. We still have to multiply it by 3x minus 7, and 15 times 3 is 45, so 45x, and 15 times 7 is 105. So that's 45x minus 105 equals 120 divided by 3 is 40. So that's 40 times 2x. And 120 divided by 5 is 24. So that's 24 times 3, right? We're multiplying by the numerators here. And 40 times 2x, of course, is 80x. 24 times 3 is 72. And there we go. We have our equation that does not have any denominators. we can solve. So we could, for example, subtract 80x from both sides of the equation. So 45x minus 105 minus 80x equals 80x plus 72 minus 80x. 45 minus 80 is negative 35, so that's negative 35x minus 105 equals 80x minus 80x cancels, so that's just 72. Next, we need to undo the subtraction of 105, so we will add 105 to both sides. Right, we have the left side, and we add 105 equals 72 plus 105. So minus and plus 105 cancels, leaving us with negative 35x equals 72 plus 105, which is 177. Finally, we divide both sides by negative 35 to undo the multiplication. I'll continue it over here. Negative 35x over negative 35 equals 177 over negative 35. So the negative 35 cancels, leaving us with x equals, this can't be simplified, so that's just 177, well, negative over 35. So negative 177 over 35 is the answer. If you feel like this was a little bit fast, that you weren't able to follow all the mental math, I strongly encourage you to go back to the original example before all of my annotation. Try the problem on your own, and if you get stuck, look side by side at my notes and see if that will help you. It will be really good for you to go through this problem on your own just to get a better feel for the process. But as you can see, we did the exact same thing, just the numbers were slightly bigger, right? We found the common multiple, multiplied every term by that common multiple. That got rid of all of my denominators, and the problem became relatively straightforward.